Mexico in the late 1990s, a country where laws work selectively. During the day, the streets are noisy, vendors call out to customers, politicians smile from screens. But at night, the cities fall silent. Metal shutters come down. People hurry home because they know other masters appear on the streets. To the north, the border with the United States is a huge artery through which drug trafficking flows. Marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine go to where they are willing to pay 3 times more for every gram. The border is called gold, a golden vein, but this gold is black, soaked in blood. Old cartels like the Gulf lived by certain rules. Less noise, more profit. Their leaders believed that public violence attracted unnecessary attention. The business relied on corruption and silence, but the balance proved to be fragile. The state is poor and the army is corrupt and underfunded. In the barracks, there are thousands of soldiers who know how to fight but see no future. Salaries are meager, prospects are zero, and the temptation is always nearby. The cartels pay many times more. Thus, a new force is born. Not a family, not a street gang, but a structure with military discipline. People who were taught to destroy the enemy will soon start selling their talent to those who offer them money and power. The name of this force initially sounded like a radio call sign, just a letter.
But soon it will become a symbol of terror for an entire country. Los Zetas.
The story of Los Zetas begins in the barracks of the Mexican armies. In the early 1990s, the government creates an elite unit, DAFA, Special Forces. They are trained by American Green Berets and Israeli instructors. Soldiers are taught to storm cities, conduct guerrilla warfare, and set up ambushes. These should be people ready to fight drug cartels and insurgents. But the irony is that these very skills will serve those they were supposed to fight. The salaries of officers and sergeants are laughable. The supply is poor, the future is uncertain, many start looking around. And there, outside the military base, they see the luxury of the cartels, villas, cars, money that cannot be earned honestly. At the same time, cartel leader Zaleva Asel Cardenas Gillen is looking for a way to strengthen his power. He understands that confrontation with other drug groups requires not just thugs, but real fighters who know how to fight by army rules. And he takes a step that will change the entire history of Mexico. He begins to recruit deserters from. The first to switch to the cartel's side were merely guards. Their task is to escort shipments and protect the boss, but their training quickly makes them indispensable. They operate with discipline, just like the military. Any raid turns into an operation, a kidnapping into surgical strikes. This is where the name Los Zetas appears. The letter Zeta was used in the army radio code, and this nickname stuck. At first it sounded mundane, but soon it became a symbol of fear. At the head is former officer Arturo Guzman de Sena, Zeta 1. He turns the security group into a real squad. They have their own rules, hierarchy, discipline. Unlike other bandits, they do not make noise unnecessarily. They work professionally, coldly, and quickly. It is during these years that the foundation is laid for what will later make Los Zetas special. They are not a cartel in the classical sense, they are an army at the service of the Mafia. And very soon, this army will realize that being guards for someone is too small. In the early 2000s, Los Zetas were still formally part of the Gulf Cartel. They were a punitive squad, the boss's personal army, but it quickly became clear these people were not like ordinary bandits. They operated like the military. Their convoys moved along the highways as if they were an army column. Ambushes were set up with the precision of special operations. Unlike other cartels that relied on brute force and chaotic violence, the Zetas knew how to plan. Each raid looked like a training exercise. Reconnaissance, timing, coordinated actions. The police, accustomed to street shootouts, were powerless. The Zetas did not create chaos for chaos's sake. Their actions were swift and effective. During these years, they began to earn money themselves. Initially, small things, kidnappings, extortion, a toll for truck passage, then control over entire sectors of the economy. One of their innovations was fuel theft. They tapped into oil pipelines and resold gasoline. It seemed like a small operation, but it brought in millions. After the death of Zeta 1 in 2002, command passed to Heriberto Lascano Zeta 3, nicknamed El Lasca. He was a less impulsive but more strategic leader. It was he who made Los Zetas independent. Under him, the Zetas began to think not as security but as a new cartel. They create a network, expand their influence in the northeast of Mexico, and build a parallel economy of fear. Shops, bars, gas stations all start paying tribute. Even municipal officials understand. Power is no longer in the capital, but here, with people who have call signs instead of surnames. Zetas act harshly and set an example for others. They use not only force but also psychological terror. People are not just killed, their executions become a warning. Fear becomes currency and discipline an instrument. By the mid-2000s, no one considers Los Zetas as mere guards anymore. They are a new force, and like any army, they are preparing not just to defend but to attack. By 2010, Los Zetas ceased to be part of the Gulf Cartel. The split had been brewing for a long time. The army of mercenaries became too strong to remain in the shadows. A war begins, and the country fully learns for the first time what Z is. These years will go down in Mexico's history as a time of unprecedented horror. The Zetas understand the main weapon is not machine guns and grenades, the main weapon is fear. They use terror as a tool of control. While cartels used to avoid excessive attention, the Zetas take the opposite approach. They kill demonstratively. The bodies of enemies are dumped on busy highways. Banners with threats are hung on bridges. Videos of executions become part of their propaganda. Each murder is a spectacle for viewers who must conclude it's better to stay silent and comply. The most terrifying chapter is the tragedy in San Fernando, 2010. A bus with migrants is stopped on the highway. The people are taken out and given a choice: work for the cartel or die. Most refuse, they are shot. In 2011, the situation repeats, only the scale is even larger. Several buses, hundreds kidnapped. Mass graves. The news mentions the numbers 72, 193. But behind each number is a family that will never see their loved ones again. The Zetas expand terror to the entire society. They impose taxes on businesses, take control of gas stations, stores, even street vendors. Those who refuse to pay disappear. People get used to the new rule: silence saves lives. Under the Zetas, Mexico encounters the concept of a theater of violence for the first time. This is no longer crime for profit, but crime for the sake of a message. They use public brutality as marketing. During this period, Miguel Ángel Treviño Morales, Zeta 40, comes to power. Unlike the military, he grew up on the streets. His style is sadism. His enemies hate him, and his own fear him. He is convinced terror is the best way to hold power. It is under him that the Zetas become a symbol of absolute brutality. 2010-2012 are the peak of their power. Pomo, Idi, They control vast territories, but along with this, the country is hit by an unprecedented level of violence. People start whispering about the Z as a curse, and even other cartels accustomed to blood consider the Z too brutal. The history of Los Zetas is not only about wars and horrors, but also about the fates of those who led it. Each of them left their mark, and together they turned the cartel into a legend of terror. Zeta 1. Arturo Guzman de Chena, the first commander of the Zetas, a former special forces officer. He created a structure that differed from ordinary gangs. For him, discipline and obedience were more important than improvisation. Under his leadership, the Zetas turned into a miniature army. Uniforms, hierarchy, tactics, but his life ended quickly. In 2002, he died in a shootout. His death became symbolic. The soldier's place was taken by those ready to go further, even harsher and colder. Zeta 3. Herbert Lascano Lanasca. If Zeta 1 was the creator, then Zeta 3 was the architect. Lascano understood strategy. He was the one who made the Zetas an independent cartel, separating them from the Gulf. His style was less public but more systematic. He developed the business: kidnapping, fuel theft, business taxes. Under him, the Zetas became a corporation of violence. In 2012, he was killed by Marines, but the body disappeared from the morgue. Many believe he is still alive, a legend that still frightens. Zeta 40, Miguel Angel Remino Morales. A real monster. Unlike the first leaders, he was not military. He grew up on the streets and brought a cult of sadism to the Zetas. His executions were demonstrative and brutal. He considered fear the most reliable tool. Even his own people feared him more than the enemies. It was under him that the Zetas went down in history as the most brutal cartel in Mexico. In 2013,
He was arrested, and the country breathed a sigh of relief, but not for long.
Zeta 42. Omar Trevino, brother of Zeta 40, who inherited his business. Less charismatic, but just as tough. After his brother's arrest, he led the remnants of the cartel but could not hold them together. In 2015, he was caught, marking the end of a centralized Los Zetas. Each leader was different: a soldier, a strategist, a sadist, an heir, but together they made the Zetas, what they became, an army of terror that went down in the country's history. After 2012, the history of Los Zetas rapidly declines. The army, which not long ago held half the country in fear, begins to fall apart. The reason is simple. The government finally decides to strike the cartel. The first serious signal is the death of Jose Lascano Zeta 3. He is killed by the Mexican Marines, but the story takes on an almost mystical turn. Lascano's body disappears from the morgue. Officially, it was stolen by unknown individuals. Unofficially, many believe that he is still alive. For ordinary residents, this mystery only intensifies fear. If even the death of the leader is not confirmed, it means the Zetas are ghosts that cannot be destroyed. A year later, in 2013, Zeta 40 Miguel Trevino Morales, the monster who became the face of terror, is arrested. His arrest seems like a victory, but in reality, it opens a new wave of violence. Different clans within start fighting for power. Each wants to control routes, money, territories. In 2015, his brother Zeta 42 Omar Trevino is arrested, and this becomes the end. Without leaders, the Zeta cease to exist as a unified cartel. But the disappearance of the center does not mean the disappearance of the threat. The cartel breaks into dozens of fragments, new names emerge. The Cartel del Noreste, Zetas, Vieja Escuela. Formally, these are different organizations, but they are all fragments of that very army. They continued to kill, extort, kidnap, but no longer with the same strength and scale. By the year 2020, the Zetas are shadows. They no longer control entire regions, but their methods live on.
The fear they instilled has not gone away.
People still whisper about the letter Z. For many, it is not just a symbol, but a reminder that the night can bring back old horrors. The fall of Los Zetas shows that any empire of violence eventually collapses, but its remnants still remain and scatter across the country like fragments of a grenade. Today, Los Zetas, as a unified cartel, no longer exists. Their leaders are dead or in prison, and former fighters have joined different groups. But to say that the Zetas have disappeared is to deceive oneself. Their legacy continues to live in every city where people have learned to stay silent and in every business where they still pay taxes to unknown entities. The Zetas changed the very concept of a cartel. Before them, drug groups were like mafia families, yes, violent but more secretive, profit-oriented. The Zetas showed that fear can be the main product. They turned violence into a show and execution into advertising. Every corpse left on the bridge was a message. Every banner with threats was a marketing tool. Their military structure became a model for others. Now, many cartels operate like armies. They have a hierarchy, special units, even their own tax systems. What once seemed innovative, Z has become the norm, but the main legacy is memory. In the cities of the Northeast, people still remember the years of terror. Those who lived during that time know the value of silence. In conversations, there are no loud words, only hints and glances. The letter Zeta has become a symbol of silence, a sign that cannot be spoken aloud. For Mexico, the Zetas became a painful lesson. When the state is weak, when the army is devalued, when corruption erodes institutions, even elite soldiers can turn into monsters. The country created a monster with its own hands, which then turned against it. Los Zetas are gone, but they changed the criminal world forever. And if you ask a resident of Tamaulipas or Nuevo Laredo what the letter Z means, he will most likely not answer. He will just lower his gaze, because sometimes silence speaks louder than any words.